Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm Ben.
And I'm Zach.
And today we have my brother
Jonathan
on the podcast. And Jonathan's been on the podcast before, right?
Yeah, I did Soul.
Yep. And that, I believe, was episode 18. And we are now on episode 70. So
Well, that's a lot.
You're on episode 70 of the Movie Vault. This is a very special episode because we're at the turn of a new decade. If it's anything like the 1970s in America were, it's going to be a grimier, scuzzier. New York City is going to be a wasteland at this point in our decade. And this is completely based off the 20th century. We're basing our podcast on.
So what a good way to start out this grimy decade with the sci-fi comedy.
Yeah, that's actually kind of sleek. So, not exactly the grimiest. Although there are some grimy aliens in this movie.
Yeah.
So I think we'll start out by we'll talk about a little bit of background, set the stage for the movie that we're doing, which is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was a movie adaptation of a book, which is an adaptation of a radio drama, I believe.
Yeah.
And maybe we could talk a little bit about the history of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and how it's cemented its place in pop culture, and then we could talk about the plot of the movie, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we thought about it and what the future is for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy canon, or whatever it's called.
Or non-canon, or whatever.
Or readaptations.
Yeah. So, in 1978, Douglas Adams convinced the BBC to let him do a radio drama called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It started out not too popular, and then it got fairly popular, and someone convinced him to write a book about it.
And that book became one of the most popular books in the universe.
Fun fact about the book, if it feels like it's only half of the story, that's because it is. Douglas Adams was infamous for being really bad at deadlines. He'd passed several, so the publishers finally got fed up and said, "Finish writing whatever page you're on. We'll just publish that." So he had to write a second book. And yeah. Also, the second so after the success of the first radio series, he wrote a sequel, which doesn't make any sense if you think about it, which is partly because he was on so tight of a deadline. By the end, they were finishing up editing. They were writing the script as they were recording and finishing up editing the day that the last episode was released. The second book kind of cleans up the
messiness of the second radio drama,
but also completely contradicts it.
Which may be why this movie, I think it feels kind of like there's a lot of things going on at once, and like I think you can almost tell. Now here's a question: was this the first book, or was this the first and second books in one movie?
It was the first book.
So it was just the first book.
Yeah, although the plot wildly diverged from the book. Okay.
All right. So I guess when we talk about the plot, maybe you can point out the areas that some of the diversions were.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to incorporate Zach into this conversation, but I feel like he's not going to have a lot to add. So maybe we should just start talking about the plot. Do you have anything to add, Zach, before we start?
No.
All right. That's good to know, Zach. Thanks for your input.
So this story has been adapted a lot. It was the original 2 seasons of radio drama, and then later, after Douglas Adams' death, they made 3 more, adapting the rest of the books of the trilogy. It's a trilogy of 5 books.
A trilogy of 5 books, but like some of them are incomplete. So is that how they stretch it out to 5?
The first 2 are basically 1 book, and the other ones are basically sequels.
Okay, so it's 4 books,
and then,
if you want to do that way.
And there was also, in the 80s, there was a TV show.
Okay, yeah, because that one's on Hulu.
Yeah.
And then they're also coming out with a new TV show, if they haven't already come out with it, I believe.
Yeah.
Is it also coming to Hulu?
That's what I read. I haven't heard any recent news of it.
So it's somewhere in production hell. Maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
So essentially this movie starts with Arthur Dent, our lead character, and he's protesting them building a bypass through his house. And then in the movie, at least, these aliens come and they're building a bypass, correct?
Yes.
So is the irony supposed to be that he's protesting a bypass of his house and then they end up destroying the whole earth to build a bypass?
There's actually more irony in the radio drama than the other adaptations, because they kind of had to skip some parts.
Right. So they kind of playing up that irony of like, there's always a bigger fish in the universe that could be doing the same thing to you that you're doing to somebody else.
But I think it's a great way to start the series.
Yeah. And we learned a little bit more about Arthur Dent. He's friends with Ford Prefect, which...
Prefect.
Okay.
Okay, so a joke you might not get is that Ford Prefect was a type of car in England at one point.
Oh, okay. Is it like an international car that they made?
I don't know that much about the car.
Okay. But the interesting thing is, coming off reading like Brave New World, like the addition of Ford, it just seems like it makes sense in the science fiction context. But I have no idea. That's obviously not probably. They probably didn't do that for the same reason.
Yeah.
But so they end up. So the reason that it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is they use this thumb thing to get up to the ship of the Vogons, who are an unpleasant race, and the Vogons are actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
And I can imagine. Do you think so? They probably utilize the Vogons' like bureaucratic humor a little bit more in the book. I would
actually. I think they utilized the bureaucratic humor more in the movie.
Okay.
Which is actually one of the cool things about the movie.
Because they actually were like had all these scenes where they were like passing out forms, and it was like, well, we can't do that until we get this form out and we have to sign it, and they're very slow. And they also had like the stormtrooper things where they were bad at aiming, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But they end up in space. They don't want to be here. They get kicked off the ship, and then they get picked up again. And this time, okay, you're gonna have to explain to me the randomizer. That's not what it's called.
So it's the infinite improbability drive.
And so this is how their hyperspace works, right?
So the hyperspace is a separate thing. This is the new and improved version.
Okay.
So what it does is make an improbability field, which makes it so they have something about a probability of being anywhere in the universe at once. So it messes with probability, so equally probable to be anywhere in the universe at once. And then they decrease the improbability until they get to normality wherever they want to go.
Okay. I see. And that's why they end up as being a random object?
Yes.
Now,
there were some cool special effects that they implied in the radio drama that they're hoping they did, but they didn't.
Yeah, okay. And how did they end up coming out of being those random objects? Is that just like the normalizer?
Yeah, the improbability drive turned off.
Okay, I see. So that's kind of an important part. And then we get into the meat of the plot, which involves Zaphod Beeblebrox, the two-headed, which that might be a joke on two-faced politicians, perhaps. I don't know.
I think it was a retroactive joke. From what it looked, it seemed like it may have been like an ad-lib line in the radio drama that got extended in secret adaptations.
Okay. Because to me, this was actually not really a great part of the movie because the effects weren't that good.
Yeah.
And I felt like most of the time the second head didn't really add that much.
No. And in the TV show they had the same problem. They had an animatronic head that kind of just stood there.
Okay, I see. Oh, so it was like not even in his body?
It was like, wait. Oh, you can't see.
Oh, okay.
It was like right next to his head. He had a left head and a right head.
Okay, now that's weirder. So I kind of like this one better than that. So this guy, he has a big ego. He has with him this girl that both Arthur and him met at a party, but he ended up getting her to come with him because he had a spaceship and he used that as a pickup line. So now next time you want to use a pickup line, make sure you say, do you want to see my spaceship? But it's also probably helpful to actually have a spaceship if you're going to use that one.
Yeah, also helpful if you're talking to someone who majored in math and astrophysics.
Yeah, which they don't mention.
No.
So that would have been some nice background.
Okay, so the thing about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy canon is all the adaptations contradict each other. So sometimes you can say that thing from the other adaptation makes sense, but you don't know for sure that it happened.
So basically, they made it impossible for the scriptwriters of this movie to like really do that great of a job of encompassing everything because there's contradicting things.
I think this was the most divergent from the other versions.
Okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, Trisha is this girl who goes by Trillian because it's this cool space name. And then we also meet Marvin, the paranoid android. Which, question, does the Radiohead song Paranoid Android come from this series?
Yeah, I think the name was inspired by this
That is awesome.
character.
That made my day. I forgot about that. From their album OK Computer. It's a really, really good song. And it's based on this character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who's a clinically depressed robot because they gave him GPP, which means he thinks like people, and he's always sad and depressed, and he always says things like it. He's basically like Eeyore, essentially. I think
one of the best characters.
He has some good lines, but I can't remember too many off the top of my head. Somehow, they also are wanting to answer the ultimate question of life. And this is where, like, the plot gets a little fuzzy at different points in the movie. And it's probably mostly because they're trying to condense a lot of stuff down. And maybe it's just because of the mind of Douglas Adams. Like, he's just kind of all over the place.
So, yeah, the original series seemed pretty random and all over the place. It, like, went from place to place. And so, different ways of condensing all the information.
Which kind of makes sense because it's called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which would imply a more erratic place to place to place jumping rather than it being like a straightforward plot. So they're trying to find the question to life. There's this whole history of this computer that's on Magrathea that said and some sort of answer, and then it said you have to come back later. They're trying to get back to it, and he needs to go. He's also stolen a ship, so the Vogons are chasing him. So that's happening, and he ends up on Viltvaudel 6, where he meets his former opponent Homa Kavula, who he still has beef with because he called him stupid during the campaign, and he is the leader of a weird cult that follows a god who is like somehow related to handkerchiefs, and they all sneeze instead of saying amen, and he says bless you. And it's kind of funny. He's a weird guy because he has like half a body and like spider legs. And so essentially he takes one of Zaphod's heads as hostage in order that he brings him back this point of view gun that was created by Deep Thought, the computer. So you can see other things from the shooter's perspective. Which is kind of another random thing that pops up later in the movie. And just as they're leaving the planet, the Vogons come. They take Trillian. So now it's just Arthur, Ford, and Zaphod together. They're trying to chase the Vogons, so they end up in another ship where they crash onto the Vogon planet. They end up getting hit by these things. I don't even know how to describe that.
I think whenever they had an idea, they got slapped in the face.
Yeah. And then they end up in a bureaucratic line to try to get Trillian out of prison. She's about to get like eaten by something, and they're scrambling. It's kind of a funny scene where they're like scrambling to get the paperwork, and it's like, well, they had the wrong paperwork. They need different kind of prisoner release form, and they have to go fill that out.
It's very helpful they had the galactic president with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the president is like a specific form that if the president was there.
Yeah.
And this whole time you're like, this guy's the president? So wait, but the galactic vice president is like chasing him because he's kidnapped himself or something weird. So that's why she can like chase him. And she's using the Vogons because they're the bureaucrats. So it's all kind of like, it's not exactly the traditional setup where it's like these people are enemies and they're attacking. It's like people have made dumb decisions and it's leading to this whole mess of misunderstanding.
That's a good summary.
And so they finally end up on Magrathea, where a bunch of people jump into a portal-like thing. and I forget. And then, but Arthur doesn't end up in that portal, and so then he's sad with Marvin, and then this other guy shows up, and this guy is. Wait, is it Questelar? No.
Oh.
Who is this guy?
Slarty Bartfast.
Slarty Bartfast, which he says not to say his name. He says, my name's not important. He's like, ask him, and he's like, Slarty Bartfast. And he's like, what? That's your name? He's like, yeah, I told you not to ask. And so he takes Arthur to a pocket dimension where he shows him a new version of Earth that is near completion. And he takes him to his recreated house. And this is where, okay, it really gets kind of like strange at this point, because apparently there's these mice that have been in the whole movie, and apparently they were like controlling the Earth the whole time or something. And then it almost seems like Slarty Bartfast set him up to like get attacked by these mice who want to take his brain in order to find the ultimate question to life. And then he's just like, no, I'm in love. And he takes that, and all the other people are there, like Trillian and Ford and Zephod. And then the Vogons come after he gets the mice, so they have to do more rescuing, but it ended up being a whole misunderstanding, and they have to use the point of view gun to figure everything out, which Marvin, the paranoid android, uses. And then it ends up that the vice president and the president end up together, and they're actually in love, and
that was abrupt.
That was abrupt, yeah, extremely abrupt. Maybe hinted at a few times throughout, but pretty abrupt overall. And then Arthur and Trillian end up together, which is kind of like the crux of the movie. And basically they're kind of like, they're like, do you want to live here? And they're like, no. And I think the thing was like, they have this kind of like existentialist philosophy of life, like not mattering that much, or something like that. But we could get more into what we think the theme of the movie is at a later point. We'll cover that on a different part. We won't talk about that now. We'll talk about this now, and we'll talk about that later. All right. Well, I feel bad because Zach hasn't got to talk. We're like 17 minutes in. But that's essentially the plot of the movie. So, with that said, what was your overall impression of the movie, Zach?
Thank you for your permission, Ben. It's a great time. I love listening to Ben talk. I actually do. So, but no, I thought it was okay. I haven't read any of the books I've never listened to the radio, besides Mike and Mike in the Morning. I didn't even want to listen to that. So, yeah, I don't know. It was cool. I could relate to the robot the most. I liked him. He was cool. I love Martin Freeman. But, like, I can't really get deep about it. I don't really know what to think, you know? I liked... The president annoyed me the entire movie. You know, is he likable somewhat in the books or whatever?
I think he's supposed to be really egotistic and over the top.
So probably not.
But is he redeemable in the book? Because they try to make him somewhat redeemable.
Yeah, actually.
But he's also... I hated it because he kills the Earth. And then he ends up with the girl at the end. And I'm like, who's this girl, by the way? And then it's just a lot of stuff. I could tell it was a book adaptation. I'll tell you that. I will say that. I'm not going to just discredit this movie completely. I will say I could tell the different elements being shoved in. Like, this could have been a whole trilogy that they shoved into one movie, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because couldn't you tell that there were so many storylines going on that really didn't get any payoff or setup?
Yeah. I think the original story was a bit random, though.
Yeah, true, okay.
But
go ahead.
I'm also thinking, like, the original radio series was 3 hours long. So, and this movie was 2 hours long. But they didn't use the last 2 episodes. So technically they could have done a really close adaptation of the radio series, although it might not have worked as well as the movie.
Okay. And your favorite iteration is the book?
Not the radio series.
That's your favorite iteration?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, at least the first part of the radio series, like the first season or phase, as they call them.
And what's so striking about it? Because I'm so confused how a radio series could get big like this.
I feel like they missed some of the humor in this movie, and some of the satire. Like, they had the satire of bureaucracy, which was done really well, but some of them they were rushing to get the plot done that they skipped some of the jokes.
In the radio series, do they do voices for the characters?
Yeah, it's a full like.
It's a cast.
It's a full cast. Sound effects and music are done really well. I think it was one of the first comedies to use stereo instead of mono.
Okay, so this was like kind of groundbreaking for radio.
Yeah.
Like back then. When did it come out?
I think let's see, 1978.
Oh wow. Okay, that's way older than I thought. Okay, yeah. Well, that helps. That gives me some more context. As someone who hasn't listened to the radio series, I'm not sure I like the movie just because I didn't understand the plots that were kind of being shoved in my face. Now, I think I would have appreciated it more if I had the radio series, because then I could tell, you know. But I do think, like, some of the humor did land for me. You know, I was laughing throughout the movie at some parts, especially the robot. I love the robot.
Yeah, yeah.
But was he like a standout in the series? The
yes.
radio. Okay, cool. What was the president funny in this radio series?
Yeah.
Okay, because
he was kind of he was egotistical and dumb, but in a funny way.
Okay, because I did not laugh at him once in this movie. I hated him. I was so annoyed by him.
Yeah, he wasn't done that well.
No. I don't know if it was the actor or if it was just how he was written. I liked the girl. You gotta remind me of their name. I can't remember any of their names. Trillian. I like Trillian. She was. I thought the actress did a good job. I think, particularly, her character seemed, and I don't know if this was supposed to be this way, very immature. Just if the guy that she was looking for was spontaneous, she was looking for that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. When obviously Martin Freeman was the right choice. Come on, like, it's Martin Freeman. But yeah, and the only reason she kind of like in that flashback at least, she went towards the guy with the spaceship. Yes, it's impressive. But then when Martin Freeman meets with Trillian again, she says, "Look at this. You can literally think anything and make any food that you want." And she was using that all as reasons of why she dumped him. So to me, her character was just kind of shallow to me, just like it wasn't not deep. It was just shallow as a character. And I know that it might have been expressed that way. Was it like that in the radio series?
Yeah, she's kind of shallow in the series, but she had an entirely different role. There wasn't a love story between Arthur and Trillian in the radio series very much.
Well, explain that.
Like, they had met at the party in Islington, and she had gone off with Zaphod, but they never really, like, Arthur and her never really fell in love in the series.
So why would they add that? Do you know why?
Because people like romance in movies.
Because it's a blockbuster.
I guess
somewhat. Okay. That is odd to me, because why force something in a new series? Like, that's what they did with Star Wars, right? Because they had the Star Wars books with Luke and Leia as brother and sister, right? Mm-hmm. And then they make A New Hope, or back then it was just Star Wars, and they have them kind of kiss or whatever, right?
I'm not sure if that's how that...
Really? I've always thought that's how it was. Because they have the books before the movies, right?
I'm not sure about that.
You sure?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think there were books before Star Wars.
Oh, well, then I stand corrected.
I think they changed it to brother and sister mid while they were writing it.
Okay, well, then that's just a weird change anyway. But, anyway, I just thought that is just an odd change for Hitchhiker's Guide. I don't know. Because I didn't like the love story that much either. So I don't know if it was a positive thing. Do you think it was a positive thing?
I don't know. I kind of liked that the movie was different, because I didn't get the same story again, but I kind of would have I didn't think it added too much.
Okay. So it really didn't affect you.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. It makes more sense that now that you say that the love story wasn't an original part, because I think you can kind of tell that it's like added in, because like if you think about it, the movie would still work and everything would still work if they didn't have the scenes where they were interacting in that sense where they were like, but it seems like it would add a different dynamic to her role, which makes sense. They were like didn't play as much into the astrophysicist and that sort of thing.
I mean, to be honest, they didn't do that much into the...
It was just backstory.
Series.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it was based on the book.
It was? What book?
Star Wars.
The book Star Wars?
It came out 6 months before the movie.
Well, but that doesn't mean they didn't
No, I know.
have
It
the
doesn't
script.
mean that they changed it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of guessing that was a novelization of the scripts at the point, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's... Well, I do know that, like, George Lucas, like, had different iterations, like, if we're talking Star Wars. But the interesting thing to know is that this movie actually did pretty well commercially. Like, it was, like, a $45 million movie, and it made $100 million. Although, I'd love to see how it did on Rotten Tomatoes. I would guess that it's going to be about a mid-tier Rotten Tomatoes movie. Because there's going to be your critics who will have watched or gone through the other stuff and been kind of 60%. That makes sense. So it's just on the cut line of being certified fresh. Because it's like there's a lot of like redeemable factors about the movie. Like I think the shame is that I could see where there could be more humor, but there is humor that works pretty well. Like the whale falling.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty funny. And some of it might have even worked better because it was a movie. Like, but some of it I think you can't capitalize as much on it because it's a movie. So it's like a give and take.
Yeah. Yeah, my thoughts were, I kind of appreciated they went a new direction, mostly because I recently read, watched, and listened to like all the other adaptations. So this is fresh, but also, yeah, I felt like they cut out a few things cut out some of the humor to get more of the plot in, and didn't have as much of the more of the satirical parts. Yeah. But yeah, they tried to fit in a lot of the like memorable parts, even if they were fitting in slightly different ways. There were some cool hints or like Easter eggs for people who had seen other things, like the crabs were briefly crabs on Volksphere were briefly mentioned in the book. There was in the queue on Volksphere, there was actually the Marvin from the TV show.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Well, when you pointed it out to me, because obviously we wouldn't have necessarily known who he was.
Yeah.
But it was cool that they had some like references like that.
It was kind of cool to see things with more modern special effects, although there were some parts that I wish they would have kept and seen in special effects.
Yeah.
Like, more of the improbability drive could have been cooler.
Yeah, like, the only really, like, very cool thing that they did was the knit. Like, when they were the yarn and they were knit characters. Like, that was the only time they really did that, so they could have played into that more, probably.
I liked the Thanks for All the Fish song. That was cool.
Oh, yeah, that one was good. That was good, too.
I appreciated, yeah. Like I already mentioned, the Vogue on Bureaucracy, they play that up really well.
Right. Yeah. Now, okay, so what do you think Douglas Adams, is he mainly writing this as a satirical work? What is he trying to capture in his satire, like, mainly? Is it supposed to be like an environmental thing? Like, I know there's probably some aspects of that, like they're ruining the world and they kind of, like it's like they're destroying it because it was like set for destruction, and the dolphins being the superior beings and whatnot, or like what do you think the main thing is there?
I'm not really sure if there was a main point. He just had things that'd be funny and kind of just making fun of random things in society, because there's a lot of like in the book and radio series, there's a lot of political and economic humor, and also just like making fun of technology, as they briefly mentioned the Sirius Cybernetic Corporation. Yeah. Like making technology that sounds cool but it's actually kind of useless. Right. Yeah. It's true. Like they did, and the ship, like they had all these things, and you're like, well, that actually doesn't really accomplish a whole lot. That makes sense. Yeah, because it's like I think you could go into this movie. Maybe the thing is that the movie might kind of misrepresent what the actual, like, I don't know that there's necessarily an ideological like point that they're trying to make by the end of the movie that's like large and arcing, because they do make it sort of about love, so then it feels like the circular thing where it's like they started with this initial love thing and it ends up just kind of ending with the love story at the end, and they start with the house and they end with a new house, but then they decide to leave it again. Yeah. But it's not necessarily like there's this
I mean, it kind of can feel a little bit more stereotypical to movies where it's like love is kind of the thing that matters. Whereas I don't know that that's what Douglas Adams was really going for in the other adaptations.
Yeah, he did work on the screenplay, but someone else worked on it after him, so I don't know how much was his ideas.
Right.
And how much was different.
Right, because this stuff goes through studios, and studios have different things that they like to add in order to up the marketability factor. And it's interesting then, as we talk about it as critics, it's like, as critics of film. Zach, would you like to add your thoughts onto what you thought like the meaning of the movie was, or your feelings about anything related to that, I guess?
I think the meaning of the movie particularly is that's a hard one, because I think there could have been a couple. I know the book was. Do you think the book or the radio series was more focused in meaning?
Not really.
No. Okay. Well, then let me give a shot in the dark. I'm thinking it's either love in the midst of chaos, or trying to find meaning in no meaning, or you don't even try.
Trying to find meaning in no meaning kind of felt like some of my general impression of the series of books.
Yeah.
And radio series. Like, that seemed like there's some sort of vague background of like some randomness, and if there's a meaning, it's really hard to find of the universe.
Yeah, just a nihilist perspective. Now, I enjoyed it. It was cool because I think of one line in particular where Martin Freeman is like, I don't know about all these things happening, but I do know that I should have. What did he say? I should have gone with her to Madagascar. That's where something like that, right? Or he realizes that later on. I don't know what the exact line was, but I think that's like the only thing that he was certain of, and that was his epiphany when those mice were like trying to cut into his skull or whatever. So that was the climax almost, and it was a weird climax, but it was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, the realization, that's the part that confuses me though, because if that was the climax and that was the realization, but that's also like the part that changed from the other iterations to this was the love story, and yet that's like his epiphany.
Yeah.
So what was his storyline? What did he learn in the other things?
Well, in the original series, I think he kind of just... So he ends up at the end, he ends up on a prehistoric Earth and kind of just has to deal with, oh, well, I'm back on Earth at least.
Oh, so he like restarted the Earth from the beginning and he gets placed on it, they don't speed it up?
No.
Okay.
It's time travel.
Oh.
It's more complicated. I kind of want to say, but I kind of don't want to spoil the story for...
Okay. That's fine. Well, that's...
And then of course there's sequels where different things happens.
Okay.
The overall end of the book series is rather depressing. Or I thought it was fitting. So...
I want to know. I'm curious.
Well, you're gonna have to read it.
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's just interesting because it seems like the theme would change then, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's written primarily a comedy with no like major themes in mind, but you can pick up on some.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair, yeah. But other than that, I don't know, besides, finding love in the midst of chaos or making meaning out of no meaning. I don't know. Those are my two impressions. Did you have anything else, Ben, or no? No? Yeah, I don't know. What drew you to this project besides the humor? Do you like the heart of it?
I don't know. I heard a lot of people quote a bunch of jokes from it. So...
And it has a cult following, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think it has a cult following? Because it's weird. It's like a weird world and immersive, and it was groundbreaking.
It's weird. Yeah, weird, humorous.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair enough.
Sort of geeky.
I don't know. I feel like we get a lot of these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of stories that are comedic, world building, fun. Not that this is any less than that at all. This was pretty good, but yeah, I feel like it's become common. So maybe like this kind of ushered in some of those stories.
Maybe.
Like comedic sci-fi. So, because otherwise, like you have Star Trek. That's not comedy.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, maybe it is now. I'm not sure what it what it was back then, but this was the late 70s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I know there was there was one reference to Star Trek in the book and radio series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any more because I'm not that familiar with Star Trek.
okay, neither am I. Apparently, I don't even know Star Wars either.
So I'm kind of curious how much of it's partly a Star Trek parody, but probably not very much of one.
Yeah, you think it was like influenced at least?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So at one point they make a joke to boldly split infinitives that no man has split before.
Yeah, like a mathematics joke.
No, it's a grammar joke.
Grammar joke. Okay, well then I'm not even in that realm at all. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, because I could literally try to add to this movie, but I don't know what else I would. The only way I would try to correct this movie is if they would give it a little bit more time,
Yeah.
like to thread out some of these plots, to introduce whoever that bad character, the girl on the bad guys team was,
Yeah.
and like why she ended up with the president at the end. They didn't even show the meeting, or kind of, they did. And then like maybe even the main relationship between Martin Freeman and Trillian a little bit more. Maybe either they got a scene alone, like where they could fight it out, another one, or another scene in the flashback, or one in between. I just think they just kind of went on with the plot a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it could have had some more time to breathe if it wanted to. Although I don't know if that's what Hitchhiker's Guide is meant for, though.
I think it had more time to breathe in other versions.
Okay. Wow. So they were suffocating. The other ones. I'm just...
So the funny thing about the other ones is they had some of this in here, but the narrator would randomly interrupt and go on a random tangent, and they go back to the. So then, and then sometimes the tangents would have to do with the main plot, and sometimes it'd just be completely random.
Okay, so you have to figure it out for yourself.
Well, you would not know until later. They're like, oh.
Okay, but some of them never paid off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but they were funny in them themselves usually.
How long is the book?
I don't know how long the book is, but I don't pay attention to the lengths of books.
Okay.
But the radio series was 6 episodes, or a half hour long.
Okay.
And they had after credit scenes.
Oh, so they beat Marvel to it, huh?
Yeah.
All right. They beat Marvel by 30 years. That's actually really funny. But yeah, Ben.
I like the point that you made about it being an intro to other like immersive sci-fi comedian universes, because like I don't know why, but like this reminds me a bit of like Rick and Morty. Okay, I feel like I draw comparisons to Rick and Morty and everything, because what has happened is things sort of become like pulp culture like magnets nowadays. Like they pull from so many different things that you can like almost make a reference to everything based on it. But and then the thing that reminds me of it is just the different like adventures that they go on, and how like obviously it makes more sense as a TV show, maybe, that like it's not as like but it's just like the idea that you can just go on different adventures, and that's just like sort of the thing that you do, and obviously that maybe it leans more into nihilism than this actually even does, but but it has that same sort of like satire, sci-fi edge to it, and perhaps that wouldn't have happened. I mean, the main comparison you can draw is Back to the Future with that, because it has very clear comparisons to Back to the Future, but then you add in the satire, which could have come from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know for sure, but it's just interesting how these things influence into the future.
I keep comparing all satire to Gulliver's Travels, since I read it a few years ago, which has sort of the same premise, but this is more like bizarre humor.
Yeah.
Like, you make fun of humanity by getting things that aren't humans and comparing them to humans.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And Gulliver's Travels, it was one of the oldest, like, well-known satirical... Well, that might not even be true, but it's an older, well-known satirical work. And who wrote that book?
Jonathan Swift.
Jonathan Swift, not Jonathan Edwards. He's a pastor, I think.
Yeah.
Jonathan Swift, also known for other satirical works in his time. Kind of a pioneer in that department. But you know who else are pioneers of insurance?
Really?
Hedman Anglin Agency. And they are known for saving you money. Now, if the world blows up, well, nobody will be here, so that everyone will kind of be out of luck on insurance. But say you crash your spaceship, you need some insurance, you're going to want to call Hedman Anglin Agency at 614-448-67300. They are known for saving people money on auto, home, and business insurance. And Jonathan, you bought a car recently, and you have Hedman Anglin Agency insurance, right?
Yep.
How has it been working with them?
Pretty good.
Pretty easy process.
Yeah.
And I suppose you didn't have insurance before them, so you're assuming that you save money from the other insurances. But it's probably nice to deal with somebody who's a little bit more of more of a local insurance company as opposed to these big corporate entities, which you end up working with through them. But you kind of got this intermediary in between.
Yeah.
And so now we actually have somebody who actually jumped on the wagon. The rest of my family also is on Hedman Anglin Agency's insurance. So you're going to want to make sure that you get this 614-486-7300. That's 614-486-7300. And the cardboard cutouts are still... well, technically, should we give Jonathan the cardboard cutouts?
Why?
Because, we probably were offering them, and then he got insurance through them. Now, he didn't maybe get insurance...
Did he say that Ben and Zach sent them?
No, I didn't.
He didn't. Okay. Well, I guess they're still up for grabs then. But anyway, now I'm going to transition the podcast away from... No, I'm kidding. It's time for the newsstand. What was didn't I have a theme song for this last time? Newsstand! I forget what it was. But the newsstand is a newer segment that we've had where we talk about something in the news. And Jonathan pointed out that we have the Ig Nobel Prize winners out. And the Ig Nobel Prize is, I believe, a parody of the Nobel Prize. So it works perfectly with our theme of satire.
Yeah. Their goal is to make you laugh, then think.
Oh, okay. Make you laugh, then think. Because in academia, which Zach is heavily steeped in, there's a lot of research that they do. And if you read research, you realize that a lot of it's incredibly specific. Have you ever been trying to make a paper on something and you're like, I need some scholarly research articles about this? You start looking stuff up and you're like, this is so specific. It references maybe one part of what I need, but it's way more specific than anything I could use it for. Well, a lot of this stuff is going to end up being really, really specific and odd stuff. So the Art History Prize goes to a multidisciplinary approach to ritual enema scenes on ancient Mayan pottery. I'm not going to comment on this one too much, but that's got to be pretty odd in a very specific niche of pottery. What do you think about that, Zach?
Congrats for the win.
There's a whole bunch of stuff on this one website about it, but the next one's applied cardiology, and this research team they found evidence that when new romantic partners meet for the first time and feel attracted to each other, their heart rates synchronize. Now this one I think has a little bit more implications to it, because this is saying when new romantic partners meet for the first time. So that's before you actually know that you're romantic partners.
What year is this?
This would be 2022. So I think the argument behind this would be that you should have a heart rate sync thing, and when you're on a date, or even just whenever you're interacting with anybody who could be a potential romantic partner, you gotta, if you match up, you're like, well, that's how that...
New satire idea.
I don't know that it's necessarily saying that you have to be romantic partners if your heart syncs up. It's more like you are more likely to be romantic. I don't know. How would that happen? How did they find evidence for this, do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think they did some sort of speed dating thing and then monitored everybody's heart rate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's what they did. But, what would be the explanation as to how heart rates could sync up?
I have no idea.
So I'm a little skeptical of this one not being, coincidental. But it is what it is. Here's another one. So Edward Gibson and some other people analyzed legal documents that were unnecessarily difficult to understand. This is the literature prize. Or what makes legal documents unnecessarily difficult to understand? That's a really broad thing. But okay, I have a theory on this one. If you've read legal jargon, I think they have to try to encompass so many things in legal documents that they make it confusing, right? Because they're trying to have no loopholes that you can go through, and so then they word things like really weirdly.
Yeah, that was one of the theories.
Was it the right theory or the wrong, or did they find out something else?
I don't remember. Part of it was whether it was that or whether it was actually unnecessarily complicated, and I think it was leaning towards it was actually unnecessarily complicated. So, I haven't read any of these whole articles.
So
I just read summaries.
Legal theorists are apparently going to argue that the law system is just too complicated for the average person to understand, and they're going to try to gatekeep it from everybody. Zach, any thoughts on either of the last two?
Well, for the legal jargon one, it says that they focused on key psycholinguistic characteristics, so like non-standard capitalization, such as phrases rendered in all caps. So they're trying to manipulate the reader into thinking a certain way so that their interpretation will go the way that they want. Does that make sense? Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I mean, I use that in my common wordage, you know?
Yeah.
So when I manipulate, these people are doing it in scientific research. It's making me want to become a psycholinguistic person, psycholinguist or whatever it's called. I don't know, but no, I think it's cool. I think that deserves. I don't know. I feel like that's noble research. I don't think that's ig research. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I don't. Okay, the other one was kind of dumb. The people don't. I don't care when people fall in love, their heart rates sink. Who did the NIH fund that too? You know, I don't care. Or the pottery, some people just research some really dumb stuff. You know, what if you spent what did you put your PhD thesis or whatever on? You know, what if you spent your whole life studying?
Yeah, that's the weird thing about these prizes, because some of them are like, why are you studying this? And some of them are like, okay, that's odd, but might be useful. And some of them are like, let's make fun of something that happened last year.
Yeah, but even the next one, Ben, I'm sorry, I'm going to say the next one.
Go ahead.
This one person studied how constipation affects the mating prospects of scorpions. And how embarrassing must it be at a dinner party explaining to someone what you do for a living? You know, how you feed your kids is you feed... You know, you feed these scorpions and then give them laxatives and see how much their constipation, and then film them having sex. But, that's your job. That 3-step process: food, laxative, sex. You're just filming these scorpions for 19 hours a day.
That actually wasn't how that study went, but
right?
Still,
I mean, my biochemistry professor, when he was in his PhD, trying to earn it. He would spend 8 hours a day filming ducks having sex because that was one of his research prospects. So it gets weird like that. So I'm just he says he regrets it, which I'm glad. He's normal. But it does get kind of dumb. And Ben is right. I am steeped in academia, but nothing stupid like this. I hope I never get carried away to the point where I have to experience these atrocities of the human race. You know, I don't know. I feel like we could reallocate our money into much more important things. You know, I don't know. That's my take. I feel like that, but I also feel like people would agree with me. Isn't that common sense? Isn't that just common sense, or is it not? I don't know. What is it?
I think so. I just think that maybe there's I just have a lack of understanding of how science fields work once you get to this point in researching. Because who assigns people to the scorpion constipation project? And also, how much do they know about scorpions that this is what they're curious about? This is what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
They must be really experts on scorpions, because they're well, what we haven't figured out yet is that we don't know whether if they're constipated. It's not just that they're constipated scorpions, which that's not two things together that I never imagined that I would say in any sentence. But we also know enough about them being constipated that our next thing that we're worried about is what if they're constipated and they're trying to mate?
Okay, so I kind of think that from the summary I read, I feel like that kind of I kind of get the point and it kind of makes sense, but also I feel like that title kind of misrepresents the whole study.
So is part of this thing is probably that they like to name the things.
Yeah.
Like in a way that makes you not really understand the logic behind where they came to the study.
Yes.
That kind of makes sense.
So the thing is, scorpions can lose their tail in like precarious situations, but that makes them constipated. So they're trying to study what happens with the rest of their lives.
But still.
That makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, but it's still kind of.
Nobody cares.
All right. Well, the medicine prize. Maybe we'll try to get through. Well, I'll just read through a couple of these and we'll talk about the most interesting ones. Because the medicine prize to me didn't seem that interesting. It says these researchers they were given the award for showing that when patients undergo some forms of toxic chemotherapy, they suffer fewer harmful side effects when ice cream replaces one traditional component of the procedure. And I don't know which part this is, so this is not a very helpful name. And I think it has something to do with sores. And so it's usually sucking on ice chips, so instead they try ice cream. See, that's where I'm like, they're using the title to make it sound weird, but like this, I think one thing you could think is like, you're like, wow, they're putting ice cream through the veins of the patient. And it's like, no, it's not that. It's that the ice chips part, which is like, I don't know how that's good for their diet, but like I could see how you could like maybe have the same, you know, it might be more preferable to use ice cream if you can over ice chips. Okay, this is the engineering prize, which is a good one. These scientists or engineers or whatever they're called tried to discover the most efficient way for people to use their fingers when turning a knob. Which, you know, this is going to be one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily think of for engineering because it's kind of like biomechanics.
You should read the second paragraph. Just read it. Explain to me.
Okay. 32 subjects were all students, 19 to 20 years of age. And the 45 wooden test knobs ranged in diameters from 7 millimeters to 130 millimeters. The researchers placed the knob on a transparent acrylic plate and put the plate on a table. Subjects would turn the knob turn each knob clockwise with their right hand. The thumb and the forefinger were used most frequently, and extra fingers were used as the knob became wider. So the thumb and the forefinger. So if you have a small knob, you're using these fingers. If you have a bigger knob, you're using more fingers going down the hand. Okay. Subjects switched from 2 to 3 fingers at 10 to 11 millimeters, and from 3 to 4 fingers at 23 to 26 millimeters, and from 4 to 5 fingers at 45 to 50 millimeters. Industrial designers, take note. Okay. This one seems like it's like, do you actually have to do a study on this? Because isn't this just like it seems like there's a psychological aspect to this as well, because like theoretically at the smaller knob you could use your thumb and another finger that's not your forefinger, but you're naturally going to use your forefinger. So I don't know. As an engineer, like, do you have any comments on this, Jonathan?
I guess it's helpful to know how humans are going to use your design. I'm not much into the user experience side of engineering, though.
Yeah. So they were talking about a universal knob design. So that's really the key to this. They're trying to come up with a knob that fits the entire universe.
Go to the peace one. Skip the next one.
No physics. Peace. The peace one was a bunch of people for developing an algorithm to help gossipers decide when to tell the truth and when to lie.
I don't know.
What do you think about this one, Zach?
I mean, as a gossiper, I think that really it depends on the situation. But this says they will define. So they what is it? They think of gossip as a negative factor in social interactions. So we already disagree on that premise. But the authors of this paper treat it as sharing information about absent others. So they call that the target with one or more receivers. Just this is as a viable strategy for promoting and sustaining cooperation. So where there are conflicting interests with the in-group and out-group members or strangers. So this information can be positive, negative, or neutral, but it should be honest. So, yeah. So they set out to determine when people are more likely to be honest or dishonest in their gossip, drawing on models. So this one's not that bad. Again, it's just the phrasing of the title. I think this is more of a sociological, psychological, and behavioral study. Although, like, I don't know, some of this stuff, like, just seems kind of obvious, and to me it's just not needed. And again, like, we're saying this over and over, but it really does astound me every time I read something like this. Like, the next one is, there's an economics prize for explaining mathematically why success often goes to the most talented people, but instead to the luckiest. That's true. I mean, we all know that. The people who make it in this world are lucky, right?
I think the real thing is that I don't think there's any good way to determine who's talented and who's lucky.
It says mathematically.
Yeah, but like, you can get into a whole, like, philosophical debate on, like, what makes someone talented. Like, it's kind of a subjective term if you think about it, because, like, or what makes people successful, because something has to make people successful. And something has to make, I don't know, it's just, there's a weird gray line. I agree there's if you had an objective way to determine who was the most talented and who wasn't, it probably wouldn't be the most talented people who are always in the most successful positions. That's definitely true. But it's like, there's no actual good way to determine objectively who that most talented person is. Mm-hmm. We see that in college admissions.
Yes. Yes. That's it. I just say yes.
Really, the last one, the safety engineering prize for the moose crash test dummy, I thought was pretty cool. Like, why did that one get on there?
I feel like the selection is random. Like, yeah, that was obvious. Why did you study that? Or why in the world do you care about that? Or, okay, this is odd.
Yeah, like the moose crash. Like, I see like a specific purpose as to why they would do that. It was in Sweden. There's moose. They want to know what happens when you crash into a moose. So
yeah,
they don't want to use a real moose. So that one's pretty obvious to me. It's an interesting idea to have a parody of the Nobel prizes, which, you know, Nobel prizes mean a lot if you win them, but they're also kind of like subjective, like anything else.
I think there is one person who has won both a Nobel Prize and an Ig Nobel Prize.
Oh wow, that's something that you want to achieve. That's kind of like winning an Oscar and an Emmy and a Tony, winning all of them. If you win a Nobel and an Ig Nobel Prize. Well, I guess we should probably wrap this thing up.
Oh yeah. Oh, one more thing about the movie that I forgot to mention.
But we'll circle back around to the movie. Okay. Closing thoughts.
Okay.
Well, add your thing first. Sorry.
Okay, so
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I appreciated that they used the theme from the TV show and radio series. It's the Eagles song. Was it Journey of the Sorcerer? Which I like, but when I first heard it, I was like, "What? This is not the type of music I was expecting to be the theme song," but I really like it.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was. I think you mentioned it was an Eagles song, but I kind of forgot. Okay. And then let's see, my closing thoughts on the movie are, I think it's an adequately entertaining movie. I'm guessing the other forms are actually more entertaining in relation to the rest of the genre that you're comparing them to. There's not a lot of radio dramas to compare to, so I'd guess this is probably one of the best radio dramas there is. And then there's a lot of TV shows. It might not be the best TV show, but it's probably a pretty good book, especially in its genre of like satire and comedy, which I don't think is like, again, I don't think it's as populated of a genre of book as like romance or straight drama books or horror books, especially heavily populated. This is gonna be a more niche and fit better. So I think as an overall, I see a lot of potential. This is probably not the best first thing to watch in the series, but it gives you like a nice little speed run through what it's about. So that's kind of cool.
I thought it was cool. Like you said, I think you had a good point, Ben, about the Rick and Morty point where it's kind of like a magnet for pop culture. I think this was heavily influenced by pop culture, just because comedies are usually influenced by pop cultures, honestly, unless they're like a really groundbreaking original thing. But I mean, we said Star Trek or, you know, But the thing, this being in the 70s, I wasn't in the 70s. Were you, Jonathan?
No.
I'm just joking. But the tone was different back then, especially with sci-fi. So I think now where we have a plethora of sci-fi, anthologies everywhere, for me, it's, I don't know, I can get lost in it pretty easily, but I'll remember this one. I think it was pretty distinct. I think the Vogons were pretty cool, especially when they wore those leather suits. Like, that's an image that's going to be in the back of my head for the rest of my time on this earth. But, yeah, and the robot was cool. So, and Martin Freeman, I actually think is a genuinely great actor. I do. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I don't think I absolutely love and am ecstatic for this movie, but I think I'm interested in listening to that radio show now, the radio series, just because I think that would add a lot to it. And it's only 3 hours, so yeah. And I'm a podcast guy anyway, so yeah. What about you, John?
Yeah, I thought it was entertaining, maybe not as good as it could have been, but it was a cool addition to the series with little nods to other parts of the franchise. Cool dolphin song at the start.
Yep, dolphin song was good.
And I can't decide if it would be better to watch it before or after, because on one hand, if you watch it first, you don't have as high of expectations, but on the other hand, yeah, there's a lot of little things you'd miss, and maybe the plot doesn't make any sense. Right.
Yeah, there's probably pluses and minuses. And it was the last thing that was made until this new TV series? Right?
No. So the 3rd to 5th phases were made after this TV show, which are adaptations of the 3rd to 5th book, and then there's the 6th phase of the...
Okay.
Then there are a couple of live shows, but...
So do you have to... Is this something you have to, like, get on Amazon to get or get from the library?
The library had some e-audiobook. That's where I listened to it from.
Okay.
So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy primary phase, secondary phase, tertiary phase, quandary phase, and quintessential phase.
So they get off into different things that aren't actually real metrics. So that's kind of cool. My letterbox rating for this is 3 out of 5, so I'm going to be right on with the Rotten Tomatoes score. And I think that, because it's way better than a lot of the mediocre movies that I've watched. But it's not going to be like, a cinematic... There's still some aspects of it that, in terms of quality, that leave some to be desired. So it's in that middle ground. But I think it's a perfectly entertaining movie. Really, a pretty good movie to watch with a family too. It's got like a few things, but compared to like The Deer Hunter and some of the other movies we've reviewed recently, it's way better to watch with a large group of people. So keep that in mind as well. All right, Jonathan, do you want to close the vault?
Actually, I think we should get Marvin to close the vault. Hey, Marvin! Hello. What do you want me to do? Can you just close this vault door? Brain the size of a planet, and you want me to close the vault door. Okay. Ooh. And me with all the pain down all the diodes down my left leg.
Oh, that's great.